What's the mater in the sartorial kitchen? Well, it's just my fried green tomatoes straight out of the garden. Then I'm doing a panzenella take on a caprase salad. And last but not least, it's a fresh, flavorful gazpacho. So why don't you pull up a chair and dine with me?
Welcome back, everybody. Today is a tomato tour de force. Well, another one. I did one a few seasons back, and I come up with some more recipe ideas. Also, my garden has done very well this year, so you'll notice I'm using a lot of ingredients out of the garden. I've kind of planned menus around that. So to kick things off, fried green tomatoes. Now it's just me, so I've just got a few little guys here. I'm just going to cut up. Now you're thinking, why green tomatoes? And I've had people ask me this before. Well, the thing is, they're a little underripe, so they're firmer. The thing with red tomatoes, they're kind of soft and they're really juicy, so they're not going to hold up well to frying like the green tomato will. So that's the main reason. I also think they're not quite as sweet as a tomato, so they have a more of a savory flavor to it. And they're delicious. Okay, so that's just a few slices there. I've already got my dredge station set up, but before we get there, I'm going to blot these guys. They do have a little moisture in them still, so I just want to kind of pat them dry. That's going to help our dredge stick better. Make sure we get all of these here. Just pat them dry nice and good. And you can see all that water that came off of them. That's exactly why I did that. Now we are ready for the dredge station. Now before I dredge these babies, I'm going to add some seasoning here to each station. I'm going to throw a little salt here in the flour and in the egg wash as well. I want this to have a lot of good flavor. And also some pepper. Just a good sprinkling of salt and pepper. Shake this guy around, get all the seasoning incorporated, and we are ready to go. We just kind of come in here. I'm going to drop this guy in the flour, press it down firmly so you get a nice generous coating of flour on each side. The flour is going to create a base, and that's going to give something for this egg to stick to before we drop it into our breadcrumbs here. And just kind of press, make sure you get an even coating on every side. And then that just goes right into the oil. And then on with the next one. Guys, that is just going to lightly fry on each side for a few minutes so it just gets nice and golden brown. While that does, I'm going to work on my sauce. It's just a simple little mayo racha, and again, it's just me, so I'm just making a little here. So you can always double this recipe if you're making a larger quantity. So I'm just going to do about a couple tablespoons of mayonnaise here, which is just plenty for me. And then about equal parts ketchup here, another couple tablespoons. And then just to give it a little heat, some sriracha. And I'm just going to do a couple squirts here. I don't like it too hot. And then of course a little salt and pepper. We want everything to be well seasoned. And just come in here and give that a little stir. Mix it up. And you get that beautiful light orange color. Just a nice little simple sauce, great for dips, for sandwiches, things like that. Add a little pickle relish, make it Thousand Island. Okay, now I'm going to come in here and turn these guys over. Beautiful, guys, beautiful. Look at that nice golden brown crust. I'm just going to let it fry on the other side for a couple minutes, and we will be ready to go. Alright guys, these babies are done. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the heat. I've got a towel here, just so I can drain the grease. I want all the flavor and not the fat. These look so good. These little guys here as well. Just set that off the heat. Alright, now we're going to get a little fancy here. I'm going to take some of my sauce here. A nice big blob of sauce. And just give it a little swoosh, like they do in those fancy shows. And then we'll grab our tomatoes and rest them right on top. Now, how does that look? And dig right in. Oh, listen to that crunch. I love it. Make sure we got some of that sauce on there. It's hot. So good, guys. You get the crunch of the batter, really good, nice and seasoned. Then you burst into that tomato. It's nice and fresh and bright. Just sings on your palate. And the sauce is a perfect accompaniment. Absolutely beautiful. Next, I'm going to be making a fun take on a classic salad, so stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. I'm just rinsing off some tomatoes from out of the garden. These are grape tomatoes. Got some different sizes. I've got some red ones that are fully ripe, and then I've got some orange and yellow, which are a little under, but I like it because they have a little sweetness to them. They're a little firmer, so it's going to give us some different textures here for my salad that I'm preparing. So this is a non-traditional caprese salad. So a caprese salad, if you've ever had it before, it's usually just tomatoes, fresh mozzarella, not that shredded stuff you get from the grocer, and basil, which I have here, also from the garden, and just a little drizzle of olive oil and balsamic, and you're done. But I decided to make it into a panzenella style, so it's going to be served in a big bowl instead of, out on a tray, but it's going to have all those same flavors in there with the bread. Can't have panzanella without the bread, and it's just going to be absolutely delicious. I'm taking it with me to my church potluck. The choir has a potluck every summer to mark the end of the summer season, and this is going to be amazing. First, I'm going to start with the basil. I want to take care of it before I dirty up this cutting board with my tomato. So the basil, we're going to chiffonade the basil. I don't know if I've shown you guys chiffonading before, but I'm just going to we'll do this in 2 batches to make it easier. Take the leaves, you layer them over one another. This is the best preparation for basil, I think. And you just kind of roll it up on itself like this until it's all kind of coiled up in a little spiral. And then you just come in with your knife, and then you get these beautiful little ribbons of basil. Now I'm going to add the basil last because I don't want it to break down too much in the salad. So I'm going to go ahead and do my tomatoes and everything else and stir that up. And then I'll just top it with the basil. Give it a little stir. And save a little basil to garnish because I want people to know what's in it. And then again, just roll it up and give it a little chop. Beautiful. Set that aside for later. And we're going to move on to the tomatoes. Just kind of slice them in half. I don't want to break them down too much. I want the salad to have some good texture to it. Alright, that is the last of our tomatoes. That's going to go right into this bowl. Now I know what you're thinking, this looks like a lot of tomatoes, and it is, but you have to realize there's about 50 plus people in the choir, and I want to make sure that everybody gets a taste. Now to this, I'm going to add my fresh mozzarella. I've got it right here. I splurged and got the good stuff. Now if you wanted to, you could get the log of mozzarella. It usually comes sliced already, and just dice it into pieces, but I figured this would be easier. The pearls just kind of break apart rather easily. You could also leave the tomatoes whole if you wanted to, but I figured it would be nice to have them kind of burst open, let their natural juices kind of add some flavor to our dressing of sorts. If you want to call it that, it's really just going to be about a drizzle of each. And just kind of stir it up. You know, I can never leave the mozzarella alone. So good, guys. Alright, rinse my hands off. That looks good. I just need a little spoon here to stir all of this up. And we're going to come in here. A nice generous drizzle of olive oil just so you can see it kind of coat everything. Beautiful. And the same with the balsamic. This comes out pretty heavy, so you want to be careful just to get just enough to kind of get that flavor. Beautiful. A little salt. Kind of bring out the natural sweetness of all those ingredients. Goes well with the mozzarella. And some pepper just to round everything out, just a little bit of pepper. And then we're going to give it a nice stir. Just mix everything up. Does that not look delicious or what? You can smell that balsamic. It's nice and fragrant, has a little sweetness to it. Add some tartness, which will counteract the sweetness of the tomatoes. And then we're just going to come in here with our basil. Get pretty much of it here. And then stir that in. I always want to add it last so it doesn't get overworked. And then we'll add the last little bit here on top. Now all that's left is the bread, which I have got drying out in my toaster. Alright guys, here's the last ingredient, the bread, which has just come out of my toaster oven. I'm going to show you how I prepared that. Bread is nice and hard, but I didn't want it too dark. I just wanted it to kind of get a little bit of a toast on it and just be nice and crusty so it holds up to the dressing and doesn't get too soggy. And I always add the bread last so it stays nice and firm. Now what's nice is the bread is going to absorb some of that dressing and get nice and flavorful, but it's also going to give us a wonderful little textural component in contrast to the soft vegetables. So basically, I'm just going to run my knife down the middle here. I want nice big kind of chunks. So the inside is still a little soft, so that's where the dressing's going to get into, but then you're going to have that crunch from the outside of everything, so it's going to just be lovely. And then I'm just going to we'll do one half at a time. Just come in here and cut it into cubes. I've got my little mini bread knife here. I don't want the pieces too big. I want kind of uniformity so everything eats the same. That's the thing about salads. It's all about the knife cuts. And that is the last of our bread. So then I'm just going to give this a stir so everything's well incorporated. I want that bread coated with the dressing. And I would say that looks pretty good. I'm going to put a lid on this, and it'll be ready for the church potluck. But of course I wouldn't take anything here that I haven't tasted myself. So I'm going to come in here, just make sure I get a little bit of everything here. The bread, the cheese, and the tomatoes. Bon appetit. So good. The dressing just brightens everything up. The tomatoes are nice and fresh. They burst with flavor. Just the right amount of acidity. And then the texture from the bread. Perfect little salad. So I'm going to clean up here and I will see you guys soon. Welcome back, everybody. We are on to our last dish, and that is a gazpacho. Now some of you are probably saying, what's gazpacho? Basically, it is just a tomato soup served ice cold. But it's more than just a tomato soup. It's not like the can of concentrated tomato soup that you add water or milk to and thin it out. This is going to be made of some tomatoes, obviously, but it's going to have a lot of other veggies in it and lots of different flavors. So I'm starting with the fresh veggies first. I'm peeling this cucumber. I want to peel it. And I want to de-seed it. I don't want any of the seeds in our soup. So I am taking those out. We don't want the peel either. That's not going to create a very appealing soup. So just come in here and dig all those seeds out. And the great thing about this soup, it's served cold. So there's literally no cooking involved whatsoever. It's the simplest soup. You just throw everything together. It goes in the food processor. You don't even have to worry about knife cuts. The food processor is going to do all the work. I'm just going to chop this a little bit so it fits in there nicely. And that is it. Okay, so all the seeds. Beautiful. And like I said, I'm just going to give this a rough chop. I'm going to cut off the ends. I don't need any of that in my soup. Alright. And then I'm just going to kind of go down here and cut it into thirds. I think that'll be good. The thing about the cucumber, it's going to add some nice moisture to the soup. Cucumber doesn't have a lot of flavor, but it does have a lot of water content, which is nice. And then you get that kind of freshness. Cucumber is always like a very fresh kind of ingredient. Alright, and then next our onion. I've just got a medium yellow onion here. And again, we're going to just kind of run our knife through the center. Split this guy in half. I want to get the outer peel here. I don't want any of that in the soup. Cut off the end there. And again, we're just going to kind of cut this into quarters. Throw that right in. And peel this middle guy out. Not so good there. And then I'm going to take the peel off of this side as well. Cut off our ends. And there we go. There's our onion. The onion is going to add a nice kind of sharp flavor. So that's good. Alright, now onto our semi-prepared ingredients. Alright, onto our semi-prepared veggies. I've got garlic, I've got some roasted red peppers, and I've got some canned tomatoes. Now you can use fresh tomatoes if you like, but you have to peel them first. You can't have that skin, it's not going to puree right. The other reason I like the canned tomatoes, this has a lot of liquid in it, so it's going to help stretch out our soup and it's going to help everything blend up nicely. Same thing with the roasted red peppers. You could do bell peppers if you want, chop them up. I prefer the red and the yellow or the orange, they're a little sweeter. But again, this, you have like the preserved liquid as well, and the liquid with this, so it's also kind of adding extra flavor. It's kind of like what I like to call free flavor, because they're giving it to you. Alright, the tomatoes, we're going to add just a little garlic. Again, with the garlic, I like using the preserved because I get some of that garlic oil. We're just going to do about 2 teaspoons. And then the roasted red peppers. And these are already kind of chopped up for us, so we don't have to do any further chopping on that. So like I said, guys, this is a very simple soup. This is going to add a little heat, some sweetness. I'm just going to add a few here. I want kind of that sharpness. And then I want to get some of that liquid here. Just about a couple tablespoons of that liquid. That's going to give us some nice flavor. I want this to have lots of flavor, guys. And I'm going to go ahead and give this a bit of a pulse just to kind of get things working. Well, guys, this is a first. My food processor has decided to crap out on me. So I'm going to move on to plan B. I do have a handheld hand mixer. So we're going to give that a go. Alright, I've got it here. I'm just going to run it on. Just come down in here. Give everything a little chop. Make sure we get through those vegetables. Gonna take a little longer, but sometimes when you're in the kitchen you have to do what you have to do. Alright. Well, I would say that's pretty good. I didn't puree it all the way. I want it to have a little texture still, otherwise it's just going to be boring. Now I have a few other things here. Some olive oil. It's going to give the soup some richness. About a couple tablespoons of that. I've also got some red wine vinegar here. That's just going to add, that's going to just kind of freshen everything up. I'm going to do a couple tablespoons of that as well. Of course, we have to season this. Lots of salt here. About 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And about 1 teaspoon of pepper. And I want this to have a little heat. So I am also going to throw in a little cayenne. About a 1/2 teaspoon of that, just to give it a little kick. You could do hot sauce. I like the cayenne. And one last ingredient, and that is bread. So I've got a little more of that bread loaf that I toasted earlier for the panzenella. I'm just going to break it up into little cubes. This is going to kind of thicken up the mixture a little bit, give it some body. And I got maybe about a little 1/4 of this loaf. Just enough to kind of give it that oomph. Using bread to thicken soups is a very old, classic, traditional kind of thing. And it's great. Great for stretching things out. Bread's usually cheap, so it's a great way to kind of stretch things out. So I'm just going to come in again. And the way this hand blender works, if you're not familiar, you just kind of come in from the top and press down. And then you can kind of go in a circular motion and kind of blend things together. And I'm just going until that bread's incorporated, and it is beautiful. I will go ahead and separate this guy here. Good thing I had this, or I would have been up a creek. Alright, our soup is ready to go. I'm just going to grab a bowl and a spoon. Alright, I got a ladle here. I'm just going to ladle some of this up. Guys, it smells amazing. All those fresh veggies, the tomatoes. I'm going to drizzle just a little more oil on top. And there we have it, gazpacho. Now let's give it a little taste, shall we? You can see that it's, everything's pureed nicely, but you still have that texture to it, which is what we want. And this is one soup you do not have to blow on, because it is cool. This is great in the summer. You know, it's hot out, just a nice cool soup. Stick it in the fridge and chill it, let it get really nice and cold. It's okay room temperature as well. And it's a great use when you've processed the garden but you have a few tomatoes left over, you've got that random cucumber. It's just a great soup. You can kind of throw whatever kind of vegetables you like into it. Just a nice little lunchtime soup. Just the right amount of heat, and you just get the lingering flavors of all those veggies and the garlic and everything. Just perfect. Well, that is our tour of tomato for today. As always, I thank you for joining me in the kitchen. Like and subscribe, and until next time.